Hey creative cousins, and welcome to my channel. I'm Renita with Lene Creations, and today we are going to talk about the Jenesis Crossbody. So I am like super excited about number one, publishing my own pattern and about this bag. Um, this is my first pattern. Hopefully it's not my last, and that I can continue on with making patterns. It was like a learning curve. I had to learn a whole lot to try to get to where we are today, but I'm so happy that here's the end result of this bag. So let's talk about this bag first before we get into the tutorial on how to make the bag. So it's a fairly simple crossbody bag. I would say that it's like a medium size, not too big, not too small, but it has a flap here with a magnetic closure. And then in the inside is a small slip pocket. I would say you could put like your lip gloss or something in there. If you want to put your phone, I would suggest that you put your phone here in the back slip pocket on the exterior. And then we have our D-ring connector. So you could, interchange your straps. You could do chain strap. You could do a fabric or a vinyl strap. Whatever you decide, I made it interchangeable so you could do that. As far as the strap, I just did a simple strap where you could adjust it however long or however short you want. So hopefully that is a little more easy as well. I did categorize the pattern as like a boisterous beginner because I feel like it is beginner friendly, and I feel like you could also use it on a domestic machine as well. So and I had a couple testers do that on a domestic machine, so I feel like it would work. But yeah, this is the bag. I'm super excited about this being my first pattern. Oh, and the name Genesis is named after my daughter. My daughter's name is Genesis. So that's where we get the name Genesis Crossbody. So, of course, Genesis means the first. And here we are as our first pattern. So let's get into how to make this bag. So we'll quickly run through our cut list and materials list. For your main, you're going to need 2 of your exterior cut and then 2 of your lining pieces cut. That is of the main fabric, or main pattern piece I should say. Then for your flap, you'll need a piece of stabilizer. I am using Decoville Light because I'm using vinyl. You can use Decoville Heavy or something similar if you want a more heavier or more stabilized flap, but I'm using Decoville Light. Then for your actual flat piece, you're going to need 1 of your exterior and 1 piece of your lining. Your D-ring connector, you only need 1 piece. You don't need to cut the lining, just 1 piece of your exterior for your D-ring connectors. Your interior slip pocket, you only need 1 piece of your lining. Then if you are going to do the exterior slip pocket, you need 1 piece of your exterior and then 1 piece of your lining. And then your strap piece. And then for your hardware, if you're going to use a bag tag, you just need 1 of those. 2 swivel clasps, 1 inch. 1 of your sliders, 1 inch, and then 2 D-rings, 1 inch. Okay, so all of your hardware is 1 inch, and then if you're going to use back tags. Also optional are going to be rivets. If you're going to use rivets, you could use those in your strap as well as your D-ring connector, and I will also walk through the process of how to use those as well. Okay, so this is our material and cut list. I forgot one of the most important things for the pattern is our magnetic snap. So you also need your magnetic snap. You have your male side that has the side that's poking out, and then your female side, and then your 2 washers. So don't forget that piece because you'll need it in order for the snap to close, and I forgot to mention that part. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a little bit of prep work before we actually start sewing. Okay, so your first thing is you're going to take your stabilizer for your flap and fuse it to the wrong side of your exterior flap piece. Okay, so this is my exterior flap piece. I am going to fuse this here and make sure it's centered and you have like a seam, the same amount of seam allowance around the entire piece. After you've fused this to the back of here, we are going to mark the centers of all of our pieces except for your D-ring connector and your interior slip pocket. We don't need to do the middles of those, but everything else you want to make sure you either mark or snip the middle of those pieces. Okay, so I did forget to mention that you want to make sure that you are also transferring your like landmarks on your patterns. They are listed on the pattern pieces. There's some stitching marks as well as like your magnetic excuse me, your magnetic snap or like your bag tag. Okay, so you just want to make sure that you are marking all of those pieces from your patterns onto your actual pieces. All right, so we are ready to start sewing. Our first piece that we're going to work with is our interior slip pocket. So we have our length and our width here. We're going to fold it to where our short edges meet. Okay, so we're going to fold it in half where short edges are meeting. So it's going to look like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sew this up. We're not going to sew the bottom folded edge. We're just going to sew here down to our fold, and then again on the other side here down to our other fold. Okay, so what you want to do is I would say maybe leave like 3 fingers length open down here at the bottom. Okay, so again we're going to start here all the way down to our fold and do the same thing on this side here and then down to our fold. Okay, now that we've sewn down our interior slip pocket, what I would do is kind of snip the ends. Make sure you don't clip into your stitches, but clip the ends here, your corners. Just so we can have kind of like a crispy corner when we turn it. If you kind of don't like this bulk here, you could also trim this down a little bit. It doesn't hurt. And I would just do it on both sides. Okay, and now we are just going to turn our pocket inside out. Now here, a helpful thing would be to get a point turner and kind of get in that corner and push those corners out. Okay, so we have our interior slip pocket turned right side out, and what you want to do is turn your seam allowance here down in there so that you don't see it. Okay, so what you could do is take this to the iron and press this out. If you have a material that you cannot iron, what I would do is finger press or use a seam roller to kind of flatten this out and make it a little bit easier to work with. I am actually going to take this to the iron, and because this is waterproof canvas, I'm going to use a Teflon sheet and just kind of press this flat, and then we'll come back. Okay, so once we have our slip pocket pressed and ready to go, we're going to make sure that where we turned in our seam allowance down here at the bottom, this is the bottom, this is the top. We are going to top stitch the top of this. Okay, so right now we're going to top stitch 1/4 from this edge all the way over to the other edge. Okay, so we're going to top stitch 1/4 up here at the top. Make sure it's the top and not the bottom. And we've top stitched the top of our slip pocket. So you'll have a kind of like the bottom of your top stitching and then the top. So you're on the back of your slip pocket. We're going to put some double-sided tape on each of these ends. Okay, I am using just like a 1/8 and just kind of move it not all the way over to the edge, but close enough to the edge. And then only do this if your machine allows you to use double-sided tape. If you're using a domestic, it may gum up your needle, so you just want to check that before you use double-sided tape. So you could also use pins if you're using like a cotton or waterproof canvas, but I just think that the double-sided tape works a little bit better. Okay, so once you've done that, kind of set this aside because we're going to need to take one of our interior pieces, one of our lining pieces, and again we've marked the centers here, so you're going to make sure that you have your centers marked. From the top edge, you're going to mark 8 inches down. Okay, okay, so now that we have our line here, make sure again that it's centered and that it's 8 inches down from here and then kind of like 1 inch down from this bottom. Next, we'll take our slip pocket that we created with our double-sided tape on there and remove our tape. Okay, then we're going to make sure that we have the bottom where we still have that opening there. We're going to place it on that line and make sure that it is centered on that line. Okay, make sure your bottom crease is there. Alright, so once we have our slip pocket on, we are going to now take it to the machine and then sew 1/8 inch from each of these edges. Okay, so this edge we're going to leave open because this is our pocket. We're going to sew 1/8 inch around these 3 edges here. Okay, so again, here, here, and here, and that should close up the bottom of our slip pocket. Okay, now that we have our interior slip pocket completed and it's closed down at the bottom, we're going to take our other interior lining piece and place it right sides together. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to clip along these edges here, and then again we're going to leave, I would say maybe leave at least 5 fingers open down here at the bottom and then sew. So what I would do is sew here and then here, stop and then start here and then back up to this sewing point again. Again, you have your markings on your pattern piece where your stop and end points are. So we're going to sew the sides here, leave an opening, start here and then there. So again, you want to make sure you have kind of like you can get your hand in when we're going to turn it right side out. So I would say probably 5 fingers worth down at the bottom we're going to leave open. So now our lining is done with our slip pocket, and we're just going to set this aside for now. Okay, so next we are going to work on our flat piece. So you're going to need your flat lining, your flat piece. You should have fused your Decoville light to your exterior piece, and then you should have made your markings for your magnetic snaps and also your bag tags. Okay, so what we're going to do is first we're going to install the bag tag. If you have one, you have your measurements in your pattern where to place this at, and then on your lining pieces where we're going to fuse, or not fuse, I'm sorry, we're going to install the male piece. So again, your male piece is the part that has a little piece sticking out of your magnetic snap. Well, I forgot to hit record for the bag tag, so that is already installed here, but I will walk through the steps on how to do your magnetic snap. So at your marking, you just want to take your washer and then line that up and then mark your lines here. So I've already marked there where I want it. Then you could take a seam ripper. Be careful with the seam ripper. You don't want to rip too far, and then the hole will be too big. So you just kind of want to seam rip that line where you're going to put your prongs. And again, be careful, be slow, because you don't want to make it too big. Again, we're going to take our male piece of our magnetic snap and insert it. I also like to take some freight check and then just sit it where those prongs are. And that just kind of helps it so it doesn't burst open. Next thing I want to do is I kind of like to take like a scrap piece of stabilizer. I think this is Peltex. Again, take your washer, mark your lines. And this one, you don't have to be super neat because it's just a piece of stabilizer there. Okay, gonna put that over. And then our washer. And then close it shut. I also like to take some small pliers and just kind of squeeze it. Make sure you're not scratching your hardware. Just take it and kind of squeeze it so that it's closed. Make sure you're not scratching your hardware though. You don't want to scratch that part or bend it. Okay, so now we've installed our male piece of our magnetic snap. Okay, now that we have our bag tag secured and also our magnetic snap, we are going to take these two pieces and line them up right sides together. And I'm going to clip these around, but we are going to leave this top edge open because we need this to turn our flap inside out, or right side out, I should say. And we're going to sew. We're going to sew all the way around here, leaving this top edge open. Once we have our flap sewn around the edges here, I like to take pinking shears and just trim all the way around. If you don't have pinking shears, you could clip into at least the curves here down at the bottom to kind of make it a little more flat when you turn it right side out. But I'm just going to use pinking shears and pink all the way around here. Now we're ready to turn our flap right side out. Now be careful not to rip it. I just like to kind of grab the edges and just kind of work my way up. But make sure you are slow with it so that you don't pop your stitches. Okay, now that we have our flap turned right side out, have our back tag on the exterior, magnetic snap on the interior side. Okay, so what we're going to do is now top stitch all the way around, and then we're also going to close this top here at the where we turned our bag or flap right side out. Okay, so we're going to top stitch all the way around and also close this top edge here. Alright, last step on our flap before we set this aside is from the edge of our flap, we're going to mark a 1/2 inch from this raw edge. Okay, so here's our flap, here's our raw edge here. We're going to measure a 1/2 inch from the top raw edge, and we're going to use this marking a little later. Okay, so we have our 1/2 inch mark here, and we are going to set this aside later for another step. Alright, in the pattern, after we've finished our flap and installed the male portion of the magnetic snap, I say here is probably a good step to insert our female portion of our magnetic snap so that we don't forget. So this is one of my main exterior pieces. You have a marking here. We're just going to mark again the same way we did the other one. Find our center and then mark our lines here and install the female portion of our magnetic snap. Alright, now we have our magnetic snap installed on our exterior piece. We are now going to work on our exterior slip pocket. Okay, so now we are going to work on our exterior slip pocket, and we're going to take our exterior slip pocket lining piece and our exterior piece, and we're just going to put these right sides together, and I would say clip these together, and then we are only going to sew the top edge of this piece. Okay, so we're going to take it to the machine and just sew right here. Leave these sides, other sides open. Once we have that top edge sewn, we are now going to turn it to where now our wrong sides are facing. And then what I would do is just kind of finger press. Make sure our bottom edges are lined up. I'm going to clip that so that it doesn't shift around on me. And we're just going to push that seam allowance up. Okay, once you have them wrong sides together and this part is flipped or folded, I should say, folded, we're now going to top stitch this edge here. Okay, so top stitch from one edge all the way over to the other. Okay, now that we have sewn our slip pocket, we have our lining here and our exterior. Now it's time for us to add it to our exterior piece, our main piece. So you're going to take the piece that does not have your magnetic snap, so it shouldn't have anything on here. Okay, then we are going to lay our slip pocket right on top, and the bottoms should match as well as your side seams should match. Okay, so you're going to line up your bottoms and making sure that it lines up with your side seams. Okay, and I'm going to clip that. Okay, once you have that clipped, what we're going to do is we are now going to sew these three edges here. So side, bottom, and side. Okay, make sure we don't sew this part because that's our actual pocket. Okay, side, bottom, side. Okay, now this is considered one piece with our exterior slip pocket connected here. Next thing we're going to do is, remember we needed to mark our centers. We're going to turn it this way and we're going to mark 2 inches from this top edge. And then make sure your line is centered. Okay, so 2 inches from this here. And I've lined it up with my 10-inch mark here. So I'm going to, oops, make sure it's straight. You want to make sure it's straight. Okay, I've marked a line here. Okay, you probably can't see it on camera, but here's my line there. Okay, so it's 2 inches from this raw edge and make sure that it's centered. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our flap and we're going to line it up on this line that we just drew. Okay, so here's our flap, and I'm actually going to put some double-sided tape here on this raw edge. And then also this is on the lining side. And this just kind of helps as we lay this here. Okay, so our flap is lining side down. Our external piece, back external piece is also lining side down. And we are going to lay our flap right on that line that we drew. And once we have that kind of stuck down there with our double-sided tape, we are now going to sew a 1/4 inch from this edge here where we have our line. We're going to sew 1/4 because we're just going to put kind of like tack our flap down. Okay, so 1/4 from this edge here. Okay, so we have our flap attached to our exterior. I do remind you again, if you did not draw your 1/2 inch line from our previous step, to go ahead and mark that again. So make sure you have a 1/2 inch mark here, and then we are going to set this aside and now work on our D-ring connector. And so we're going to work on our D-ring connector. We're going to need our D-ring connector piece, and then also our 2 D-rings. These are 1 inch,
So make sure you have 1 inch, because this piece was measured for a 1 inch D-ring connector piece. Okay, so we're going to turn our piece right side down, and we're going to mark a center line down the length of our D-ring connector. Okay, so again, this is this piece measures 2 inches, so halfway would be our 1 inch mark. Okay, then next we're going to take our double-sided tape, and we're going to put it, I think in one of my previous videos I mentioned that you could either do it on either side of this line or at the top. I kind of like it at the top. But we're going to place a piece on each end of this. Okay, we're going to take our sorry if you can hear the traffic outside. But now that we have our backing off, we're going to fold to that line. Okay, and do that for both sides. Okay, so now the width of our D-ring connector piece should be 1 inch this way. Then from each edge, we're going to measure 1 inch in and make a mark. Let's see. Make sure you're using a chalk pen, or erasable pen or something, because you will be able to see this mark if you use a regular pen. Okay, so we have a mark here, 1 inch, and a mark on this end, 1 inch. We are now going to take one of our D-rings and slide it on. And your D-ring is actually going to sit right at that line, and we're going to fold over. Now what I like to do is I like to take a piece of double-sided tape so that it kind of helps to stick. Okay, so again, our D-ring is going to sit right at that line that we drew, and then fold. So I'm going to put my double stick tape there. And that's one end, and we're going to do the same thing on the other end. Take our D-ring and make sure it's sitting right at that line that we drew. so this, let me flip that. Okay, so this is what our back should look like, and that's our front. Okay, I'm going to take another piece of double-sided tape, and kind of place it right there where those raw edges are. Now you don't want to go all the way to the fold. You just kind of maybe want to go, I would say maybe a 1/4 inch from this raw edge. And I missed it on this side. We add a small piece there. Okay. Now remove the backing, and then we're going to take our piece that has our flap on there. So here's our exterior back piece. And remember, we drew this 1/2 inch line. We're going to take our connector piece and we're going to line it up with that line that we drew. And make sure it's centered. And a rule of thumb, I would say, to make sure that it is centered, if you look here at the edge where you folded in your D-ring, that should line up with your flap underneath here. Okay, so it should line up to that edge. And that's kind of how you know it's centered. I don't know if you guys can see there. It's now lined up with this side, and then the folded edge here is lined up with that edge. Okay, so that's kind of how you know. All right, so our next step is we are going to sew this D-ring connector down. We're going to sew a box around here. What I suggest for kind of like a cleaner finish is that you don't backstitch. You're going to pull your threads to the back and tie it. That kind of gives it more of a neater look than the backstitch on this D-ring connector piece. Okay, so again, we're going to sew a box around here to secure our D-ring connector. Okay, so once you have sewn down your D-ring connector piece, I do give you the measurements if you want to add rivets. I'm not going to add rivets because the gold rivets that I have don't quite match. So what I'm going to do, another option you have is to sew another box around, and you would go in 1/4 inch in from your box that you've sewn. Okay, so you have two options: either sew another box around, or you could do your rivets, and I do give you your measurements on how to add those rivets in the actual pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and just sew another box around. Okay, so here we are with our completed exterior piece. So we are now going to fold in our D-rings towards the center, take our flap and insert it down into our exterior slip pocket, and then take our other external piece and now lay those right sides together, and then clip. And then what we're going to do is, from our markings, we're going to sew all the way around to our other marking. Okay, so we're going to leave this top portion open. Again, we're going to sew from one side down the entire bottom side and then all the way up to our next marking. Alright, so now that we have all 3 edges sewn, leaving our top edge open, what I would do is you could either clip or use your pinking shears to clip the other ends as well. But I'm just going to clip. You could trim down your seam allowance a little bit, but I would leave probably about an inch here so that you could open your seam allowance for it to match up with your lining piece. Okay, so I would maybe start here and then you could trim down here, trim at the bottom, and then again probably leave about 1 inch on this side and trim on this side. Alright, so now we are going to turn our exterior right side out. And again, I would say make sure you are going slow, going careful so that you aren't kind of snapping your stitches, because this is our exterior. We want to make sure that this stays intact. Okay, so we are going to turn this right side out. Alright, we've got everything turned right side out. And now we're going to put everything together. So we're going to put our lining piece and our exterior pieces together. Now, I will be honest. This is probably the most part or the most difficult part of the bag is stitching these together. What I do suggest is, one, use double-sided tape here along the top edge. That will help as far as when you're sewing it, that it won't move. And also, if you mark your seam allowance on your lining piece so that you kind of can gauge where you want to stop and pivot. If you don't have a free arm machine. If you have a flatbed, a regular domestic, then I would suggest, one, the double-sided tape along the top edge, as well as marking your seam allowance on your lining piece so that you can navigate where to pivot your stitches. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to add double-sided tape and then also mark my seam allowance on my lining piece. Alright, so I've put my double-sided tape on the top edge of this and also marked my seam allowance on my lining piece. You're now going to take your exterior and place it inside of your lining. And if you have to squish it, that's fine. Your bag making is all about squishing your bag. Okay. Okay, once you have that in there, we're going to make sure we line up our side seams and our top edge. Okay, so I am going to take off the tape, the backing of the tape. Okay, making sure that my side seams are lined up and that my top edge is lined up. Okay, so we're going to do that for the entire top edge of the bag. Okay, now that we've gotten everything clipped and taped, kind of secure, again, this is probably the most difficult part of the bag, but we are going to sew around the top edge of the bag to secure the lining and the exterior together.
Okay, so we've sewn around the top edge of our bag, and again, this part was probably the most difficult to sew, and I know that's probably the most difficult part of the entire pattern. So what we're going to do now is to make it a little bit easier when we turn our bag around, is we're going to snip into these little corners. Now make sure you don't snip your stitches, but we're just going to snip right into that little triangle. That's going to ease it up a little bit for when we turn it right side out. And get right in there. That's going to ease it up a little bit for when we turn it right side out. Okay, so again, here's our bag. We're going to snip right into that little corner and do the same thing on this side. Snip right into that little corner. Oh, my scissors don't want to go into it. Let's see. Let's try this. There we go. All right, so that's going to ease it up a little bit for when we turn the bag right side out. So now it is time for us to turn the bag right side out. So that opening that we had in our lining, that's what we're going to pull the bag through. Again, go slow, and don't be scared to squish your bag. It's going to take form, it's going to take shape once we turn it right side out. All right, so we have our lining attached to our bag, and I did not stick it all the way in there because we're going to take it out again anyway. But now it is time to top stitch this top edge of the bag. Now if you have a free arm, that could be a lot easier for you. If you do not, my suggestion would be to turn the bag inside out. And I know it's a lot going in and out of the bag, turning it in and out, but I promise it'll be easier to top stitch if we turn this inside out. So what I'm going to do is turn this inside out and then come back. Okay, I know the bag probably looks like a balled up mess, but trust me, just trust the process. I'm going to top stitch, and because I have a flatbed, I am going to just use this inside and top stitch around the top edge of the bag. Okay, now that we've top stitched around, I'm just going to turn the bag right side out again. Okay, then make sure your bottom is flat, because we're getting ready to close up our bag. Okay, now that your interior is inside of there, you've gotten it flat as you can. I'm just gonna pull it out. Okay, now we're gonna take our lining, make sure we have all of our corners out of there.
right, our seam allowance down at the bottom, we're going to make sure that is tucked in. Okay, and I'm going to clip it closed so that it stays. And then one in the middle for good measure. Alright, so now we're going to just sew up this bottom opening of our bag. Alright, now we've sewn the bottom of our bag. We're just going to push our lining back into our bottom of our bag. Push our corners in. Alright, and our inside of our bag is done. Outside is done. Alright, our bag portion is done. Now all we have to do is our actual strap. Alright, so I have my strap all sewn up on each of these sides. If you're wondering how I actually got here, I do have another video where I walk step by step on how to assemble the strap. And I will link it down at the bottom so that it's easier to get to. But I walk you through each step on how to assemble a strap. But I will go ahead and assemble my strap and then connect it to the bag.
And here we are, we have made the Jenesis Crossbody bag. So hopefully this tutorial was helpful for you. Maybe you are a visual learner versus what's written in a pattern, and that's okay. That's what the videos are for. But I want to thank you for purchasing the pattern. I want to thank you for watching my video. And hopefully you have made something super quick and easy. And I want to see your makes. So make sure that you are tagging me in your post. I want to see them. And then I can repost them. I mean, that's always good to get a repost. So make sure you are tagging me so I can repost those. And as always, until next time, happy sewing.